All right, I was thinking about jobs this morning. Um, I just never gave much of a shit about what the job was. I always took the first one that came along. So after I graduated from high school, I'd had this nightmarish job. I'll talk about that another time. But after that, I quit there, etc. And a friend of mine, her father had a dinette downtown and a place with 12 stools and a counter. And the woman who'd worked there for like 30 years, Emma, was having a medical leave, so he needed someone to take it over. So she trained me for like 3 days. The place was always jammed. She did the cash register, the cooking, the washing the dishes, everything that had to be done in that place. It was just her. So I spent 3 days learning, and it was evident it was going to be a nightmare. So she left and left me alone in there. And I don't even remember the next 2 weeks. The place was jammed from the time I opened at 6 till I closed at 2. And everyone in there bitched about my food. They bitched about how clean I was or wasn't, how fast I talked. And, I still was young enough. I had that customer is always right. A bit of that still stuck in my head. So
Wait, were you still drinking during this time?
no, I wasn't drinking yet. I didn't know I was a drunk or I'd be out drinking yet. So after a couple of weeks, somebody was bitching about it, and I just fucking blew it. And I took the spatula, threw it against the wall, and I said, "You cocksuckers!" I said, "If any of you think you can cook better than I do, get your fucking asses back here." And I remember there was a guy named Ernie, and he worked in a warehouse. And, they were all kind of stunned in silence. And he said, "Hey, buddy, anybody can cook better than you." So I remember I picked up that spatula and I slammed it down in front of him. I said, "Ernie, you're always talking about what's a good fucking cook you are." I said, "Get your ass back here, make sandwiches, and cook burgers for these people." He said, I can't do that. There's health regulations." And I said, "You think the health department's ever been in this dump?" And then all the other customers, they were all regular. They start cajoling that guy. So Ernie gets back there and starts making the food. And I had plenty of time to do everything else as long as he was doing that. So the next day, it was Anne, worked as a secretary across the street. She took a long lunch and she did all the cooking at lunch. And the next day it was Frank, this guy who was manager at the bank up the street. And he even brought his big chef apron. I always remember that. And he's back there cooking. And the owner comes in. And I'll never, Mr. Richard.
So you made a free for all in this guy's kitchen, and then he shows up.
I figured I was kind of a Tom Sawyer kind of guy, painting the fence and everything. And he comes in, and I remember Mr. Richin, and he was just so shocked that he couldn't move. And I went over and said, "Mr. Richin, how are you doing?" He said, "What's that guy doing behind the counter?" And I said, "Don't get excited." I said, "This is a lot for one person to do. I mean, I give Emma credit for doing it, but she was always behind. So now I just have the customers cook, a different one." And he goes, "Are you insane? I would lose my license." He said, "I hired you because you were senior class president, and I thought you were a responsible person." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to tell anyone." And he goes, "You're fired." And so I remember I put my jacket on and got the fuck out of there before he could change his mind.
What? Is the other guy still cooking on the grill?
I don't know. They were in my past by the time I walked out. So, I light a cigarette. I'm walking down the street. I went like 2 blocks. I don't remember what they call that part of Portland or what they called it then. It was the worst part of town. And I hear this commotion. And I'm walking by this cafeteria, and in the back alley, there's about 10 steps that lead down to the ground. And this big burly guy comes out with this wino kind of guy, and he goes, "You fucking asshole, don't ever come back." And he shoves him down the steps. And this guy falls down the steps, lands at my feet, and, he's groaning and he gets on his hands and knees and he goes over to the garbage cans there to puke. And the guy up on top on the says, "Hey, looking for a job? We just had an opening." I looked at that guy and I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So I'm hired there, and it was a cafeteria, and they paid you minimum wage, and they hired a bunch of winos who did food preparation in the back. And the people who ate out in the cafeteria, I never actually saw the cafeteria itself out front. We were behind walls there, and it was just a bunch of winos and me. And again, I drank a couple of times, but I didn't know I was a drunk yet. And I got along pretty well with the winos, but mainly I was in the storeroom, just sitting around smoking cigarettes, and I do a little bit of work, and I thought, well, this place is great. And then like the boss, I don't know, call him Jim, he had his own office, and he was rarely out there in the cafeteria. He comes in, he goes, "Park, we're short a guy, one of those drunks." He said, "I want you to get in the Thousand Island line." So they had these little bowls, and the first wino would put ketchup in it. The second wino would put mayonnaise in it. The third wino would put diced pickles in it. And then it was my job to stir it all together.
It's like a drunk assembly line.
Yeah. So, these guys are kind of moaning and groaning. And the guy next to me just started, going like, he goes, "Oh," the diced pickle guy goes, oh, God, I'm going to be sick." And I said, "Hey, I'll cover for you. Go to the bathroom." And he goes, and he vomits a bunch of bile into the Thousand Island bowl.
Oh, no.
Then he goes, and then he pushes it down to me and he says, "Just stir it in." And I'm utterly appalled, I'm some 18-year-old kid. I knew nothing about the world yet, though I was eager to find out. And I said, "What did you say?" And he said, "Just stir it in." He said, "Happens all the time."
Oh, God.
And the thing I really liked about this job is I got one free meal a day, right? He goes, "Hey, it happens all the time." And one of the other winos said, "Yeah, didn't you wonder why we never eat here?"
Oh, God.
And I said,
No.
"Because you're winos?" And he goes, "No, but, that is why we're hungover, and, it is why we puke sometimes." And then the guy in the very end goes, "How about those raviolis yesterday? Taste a little sour to you?"
Oh, no.
And I said, "What the fuck?" And I walked to the boss's office. I said, "You can keep my fucking check. I'm out of here." And I stomped out the back door. I go down the steps, and that same wino that had been thrown down the steps, he was there drinking from a pint of Muscatel. And I started to walk by him, and he goes, "Hey, Stretch." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How'd you like the ravioli?"
Oh, God, he knew.